Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Galak Yisuyina. On behalf of the Hellenic-American Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to thank and wish the board, our executive director, our members, our Florida chapter, our sister organization, the ACCI, and everyone who participated in our programming this year, a very wonderful holiday season. If there ever was a time of year where we should all be together, celebrating with one another and supporting each other, it is this year. Of course, we must all take the necessary precautions to protect our loved ones, but if there's a lesson that we should take from this important time, it is how important we are to one another. The Hellenic-American Chamber of Commerce, above all, is a family for everyone associated with the organization, and we welcome those who are not. Our aim is to always help bring us together in whichever way possible, to cultivate relationships, and then to help support them. Let us not take anything for granted, especially each other. Please enjoy our wonderful gift to you, a link to the first virtual tour of the Museum of Cycladic Art. Kalez Dulyes, be safe and be well.
Dear friends of the Hellenic-American Chamber of Commerce, fellow Greeks and friends of Greece, before the transition of the Christmas tree, we, Greeks, celebrated Christmas by decorating a small miniature boat. The boat represents our life as we navigate through the challenges each year brings. This year has been special, at least. We have all been secluded in order to avoid the storm. Let's hope that as we sail into 2021, each of us finds a safe harbor. Speaking of the water element, dear friends, you cannot possibly think of our Cycladic civilization without turning your thoughts to the sea and the island life. Picture the waves as they crash on seaside rocks. Think of the sculptures they create, and then you will understand the power of the Aegean Sea and the Aegean light. It is hard to grasp it through mental pictures, but our virtual tour will surely give you an idea of what I'm talking about. I enjoyed watching the virtual tour of the Cycladic Museum very much. For those who missed it though, it is an opportunity to get a first-class experience of this Athenian gem even without flying to Athens. This year we remain at home, even if that means that we stay away from our loved ones in Greece and elsewhere. Not to worry, our country will always be there waiting for us. As everyone, we just wait for the dark clouds to go away. Merry Christmas and a happy, prosperous and healthy New Year for all of us. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the Cycladic virtual tour, which is organized by the Hellenic and American Chamber of Commerce and the Museum of Cycladic Art in Athens. My name is Metaxia Routsi. I'm a prehistoric archaeologist in Museum of Cycladic Art in MCA, and today I will introduce you to the Cycladic civilization through our exceptional exhibition, which is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, worldwide. The Cyclades is a complex of 33 main islands in the center of Aegean Sea. Ancient geographers named them Cyclades because they spread as a cycle around the holy island of Delos. Delos is an islet right here next to Mykonos, and during the 5th and 4th centuries BC was the greatest cult center in Greece because, according to the myth, god Apollo was born there. Probably you know that Apollo was the god of the sun and the music, of light and truth, and the god of prophecy. Unfortunately, Cyclades were the most looted area in our country, and exactly this is the reason that today we can see at least one Cycladic artifact in every museum of the world. Here we can see the looted area on the right picture of a very important site called Kavos on Keros Island. And you can see the size of the destruction that these looters caused. On the other hand, we can see how different a normal systematic excavation made by archaeologists looked like, because when we excavate a site, we are interested in the artifacts, of course, but not only. The whole archaeological complex is so important for us because through it we'll be able to explain the whole site and also the era that we are studying. After 1987, and when the Ministry of Culture started systematic excavations on Cyclades, finally we managed to study and publish material for this early Cycladic civilization. And I have to explain that when we talk about Cycladic civilization, we mean the early Bronze Age, actually, in the Aegean area, which starts in 3200 BC and ends around 2200 or 2000 BC. The earliest traces of human presence on Cyclades date to 7000 BC. Of course, we don't have any architectural remains of this era because the systematic permanent inhabitation started in the 4th millennium BC. But we have found many tools, and especially tools made of obsidian. Obsidian, you can see it on our picture here. It is a kind of volcanic rock. I could say a volcanic glass. It is very hard and very sharp, and we meet it only on the island of Milos. Through percussion, they created these kind of blades. We have to imagine them like the razors that we use today. And it is very important to tell you that obsidian had a great spare value for these people, because archaeologists have found such tools in many places far away from Cyclades, like the mainland of Greece, Crete, Asia Minor. Even in Caucasus we meet such tools. The daily activities of these early islanders were agriculture, fishing, and hunting. And suddenly, around 3500 BC, metals appeared and the development of the metallurgy started. I think that this was the greatest achievement of these people because led these island communities into economic growth, sailing, and of course commercial activities. So in 2800 BC, excellent works of bronze appeared, like these daggers here. These daggers are a very characteristic tool or weapon of the early Cycladic civilization. Chisels, of course, for stone carving, axes, tweezers, and other objects. At the same time, they used pottery, vessels made of clay, for their daily needs. And you can see that these vessels, although they are entirely handmade, I mean without the use of the potter's wheel, because the potter's wheel invented in 2800 BC, and here we are in 3000 BC. They are so symmetrical, can be described as works of art. And also they are decorated with these incised parallel lines. Particularly these kind of cylindrical vessels were containers for jewels, like these amazing necklaces made of stones or shells. I could not overlook the most mysterious object of early Cycladic pottery, the frying pans, these two vessels here in our showcase. They owe their conventional name to their shape, of course, and not to their use, which remains a kind of enigma. It is a shallow vessel with a forked handle, and the outside surface has impressed or incised decoration with motifs related to the sea and the landscape of Cyclades, like suns and stars, never-ending spirals, which are, of course, the representation of the waves. And here we have an excellent example of this kind of decoration, or boats and fish, because frying pans have the earliest depictions of boats during the 3rd millennium BC. So we can have a clear idea of how these boats looked like. We can see that they are long, they have a bow with a fish on it, and of course oars. Now, we meet the frying pans only in cemeteries, in graves, and specifically in female graves. The interpretations proposed for their use are so many, but I think only 2 of them have strong arguments. Many archaeologists suggested that probably they were mirrors, because when we fill them with water, they reflect perfectly, because the clay is very well polished. So probably they could see the reflection of their faces inside. But frying pans could also work as an early navigation instrument, like an astrolabe, an early astrolabe. The word astrolabe comes from the ancient Greek words astron, which means a star, and the verb lamvano, which means I catch. So literally, astrolabe is a star catcher. We know then that a reflected image can be used to measure an object's angle of inclination. And this is amazing if we understand the real meaning of these objects. But the greatest art that these early islanders developed was, of course, marble sculpture. And in this showcase, we can see so many different shapes and objects carved on the marble. And it seems that these early sculptors were very, very creative. Instead of written words 5,000 years ago, humans and animals and birds sprang into being by skillful hands to carve the beauty of a hard but wonderful life. Very imaginative shapes carved on different qualities and colored marble, like these vessels here. I would like to mention that these 2 cups here, this one and this one with the stems, probably were used for wine, and all the other vessels, the open vessels as we call them, were for water or milk. I chose this picture to show you the high level of marble carving on Cyclades during the 3rd millennium BC. Look at the walls of this cup right here. The marble appears translucent, attesting the skills of the Cycladic sculptor. And think how difficult, but also how expensive it was to create such an object 5,000 years before today. So this is a masterpiece of Cycladic art housed in MCA's Cycladic collection, the Dove Vase. The Dove Vase is very big and very heavy. It is a shallow vessel, and in the central diameter, a row of 16 doves is carved. I would like to say that the whole plate and the doves were made of one single piece of marble. Of course, the size, but also the doves, exclude any practical function. It belongs to a rare type of marble vessels known only from Keros Island. Probably it was used for ritual offerings. Also, I would like to say that we know that the doves were worshipped in Mesopotamia already from the 4th millennium BC. The dove was the symbol of goddess Ishtar, and thousands years later became the symbol of our Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. So, a good suggestion is that probably these islanders on Cyclades worshipped also the doves. They are so friendly, they live in the sky, so why not they used to feed them cereals with this kind of plates during of ritual offerings. This is an amazing photograph, reminds me a solar eclipse. We can see the backside of the dove vase, and of course we also can observe how it has been restored. The most elegant and characteristic creation of Cycladic civilization is the marble figurine. Excellent quality of white marble gave birth to the most typical works of art of Cycladic culture. Clear and abstract forms gave birth to these amazing objects. And exactly this simplicity, this exciting simplicity, was the great inspiration for all the modern artists of the 20th century, like Brancusi, Modigliani, Picasso, Moore, and so many, many others. These sculptors proved us that the minor includes the major. In the beginning, in the earliest phase of Cycladic civilization, and until 2800 BC, the figurines were very, very schematic. Sometimes they are like pebbles, like this one. It looks like a pebble, but I can assure you that it is not. It is a schematic representation of a human form. The most common type of this schematic representation of the human body is the violin-shaped figurine. We can see them here in our showcase, this one and these three here. I think that the reason that we call them violin shape is obvious. They are exactly like violins or guitars. This projection here is the neck and the head, and the four outgrowths are the hands and the legs. Sometimes anatomical features appeared incised, like these lines here on the belly or the pubic triangle. And this is a unique exhibit of our collection. It is a violin-shaped figurine with two holes on it. You can see probably that the figurine was broken in antiquity, so they tried to repair it with the two holes by connecting the two broken pieces, probably with a rope made of leather. Until 2700 BC, and exactly before the period of flourishing of Cycladic civilization began, several types of figurines appeared, very often very naturalistic, like this exceptional head here. It is so old, but at the same time it looks so modern. The ears, the mouth, and the nose are given in relief, and also the mouth is formed with very fleshy lips. The head displays refined and somewhat, I think, it has personal characteristics. The type that prevailed for more than 400 years until 2200 or 2100 BC is the folded arm figurine, or the canonical type as we also call it. It is a nude female form with the arms below the breast, slightly flexed knees and a barely uplifted head. emphasis is given on very few anatomical features. We see that only the nose and the breast are given in relief, and all the other features are incised, like the fingers and the pubic triangle. All the folded arm figurines are very, very thin. This means that they have only 2 dimensions. And also the backside is slightly worked. Like here, we see only an incised line representing the spine. Now, we meet them mainly in cemeteries, but also in settlements. That means that their function, their use, may have been more complex and varied. And I will give further information immediately. Very often, but not always, they have a swollen belly, like these 2 figurines that we see now. Or they have 1 or more incised lines on it, indicating the folds of flesh of postpartum wrinkles. Well, it makes sense to suggest that these figurines are probably the representation of a great god of fertility, goddess of fertility, or the Great Mother. Whatever they are, whatever they represent, we have to imagine them like the most important religious symbol of these island societies. Their use depended on the occasion, and it was different each time. It is exactly the same thing that we do today with our holy symbols. We worship them in our houses, in our temples or churches, and in our cemeteries too. I think that we'll never be able to understand the real meaning of these objects, but one thing is certain. We have to understand them, to consider them as great works of art, and not only as archaeological findings attesting an ancient civilization. Well, it is probably obvious that they cannot stand, and this happens because their feet are not horizontal. We assume that they wanted them in this reclining position. Also, I would like to say that in recent excavations on Cyclades, we find the figurines in situ in the archaeological context exactly in this reclining position to lay on one's back. And you can see here a grave of a cemetery on Syros Island and how the figurine was found above the head of the deceased. Although they appeal to the modern viewer for their almost translucent whiteness, their creators loved to color them. Unfortunately, we are not able to observe these traces without a microscope, with a very few exceptions. But we know that these islanders had and used pigments, mineral pigments. That means that they took them from the ground. For example, dark blue from azurite, which is carbonate copper, or red from hematite, which is an oxide of iron, and other minerals right here in our showcase. They pulverized them with tools like this pestle here, and then they mixed this powder with a binding material, probably oil or an egg. It is exactly the same thing that an artist does today. And then the liquid color was ready to use. They used to paint the anatomical features of the face, the eyes, the brows, the hair, and sometimes pointy marks appeared on face and ornaments. As I told you, we are not able to observe the traces of the colors without a microscope, and this is the reason that we have this photograph here, so you can have a clear idea how these figurines looked like during the 3rd millennium BC. I have to assume that we cannot say if this has to do with burial rituals or with the social status of their owner, or even both of them. And here you can see an excellent example with the color as it was found in situ, ready for use. Dark blue color in this marble vessel. Thank God we have the ghost figurines like this one here. We used to call them ghost figurines. You can see that the eyes and the brows are given in low relief. And also another one here, the eyes, the brows, and also the hair right here are in low relief. But they aren't actually, because these are exactly the areas on which the color existed and finally protected the marble from the erosion after 5,000 years in the ground. The process of carving a figurine is not so difficult as we probably thought. On a piece of marble, a pointy obsidian tool incised the outlines, number 1 here. Then they removed all the unnecessary pieces of the marble, and finally the process of carving started with small bronze chisels. And at the end, again, a pointy obsidian tool incised all the other features like the fingers and the pubic triangle. But the final abrasion of the figurine was made only with emery. Emery is a kind of rock which is so gently to the marble, does not destroy it. And there is also plenty of it on Cyclades, especially on Naxos. We have a whole mountain of emery. Now, only the 5% of the figurines are male figurines, and all of these have 3 dimensions because they are in action. Like these figurines here, on the left we can see a figure playing double flute, and the other one here is the famous harpist seated on a throne with an elaborate backrest. This is another male figurine, the so-called cupbearer, housed in MCA's collection. It belongs to a rare category of male figurines, and I have to say that it is the only complete example so far. The figure sits on a stool which is carved on the same piece of marble, and the right arm raises a small cup probably filled with wine. I would like to say that the extended hand without any support is so rare, but also very, very difficult in sculpture generally. And also the breaking that we see here happened while the figurine was in the ground during all these millenniums and not during the period of its use. It is amazing how these sculptors created such an artifact 5,000 years before. It is clear now that these people managed to capture the 3rd dimension, and these figurines are the proof. But for their female high importance form, they were faithful to these plank-shaped figurines. We also have some compositions of 2 or 3 figurines like these in our showcase. Very interesting is this one in the middle, here, right here, Probably a female figure holds a child in her arms. And here we can see a small figurine standing on the head of a bigger one. And here is a very well preserved composition with two figurines. I have to say that we call all these figurines acrobats, and probably they could be the servants of this great goddess of fertility. But I think a better suggestion is that they could be the interactive representation of a local religious festival to her honor. They are drinking, playing music, or dancing, like this one here. Also, I have to say that still in Greece, we organize such festivals to honor our saints. So I think that this is a better suggestions for these acrobats and three-dimension figurines. This is not a figurine, of course. It is a monumental sculpture, the second largest ever found, 1 meter and 40 centimeters height. There are very few large-scale sculptures in Cycladic art, so probably they were made for cult use in sanctuaries. It makes its presence felt through this amazing simplicity, the purity of the material, of course, and clear outlines. We could easily say that was sculpted by Konstantin Brancusi, and exactly this is the reason that during the 20th century all the modern artists were looking exactly for these features: abstraction, the minimum, and the direct carving. And suddenly the Cycladic miracle appeared. These island communities could produce works of art with such an amazing, a dazzling simplicity. They attract to the modern eye, which responds directly to them with a real pleasure. But this is only the half part of Cycladic miracle. Think ancient Egyptians, for example. The sculptures of their gods are huge, with heads of wild animals and monsters. It seems that they wanted to frighten people and not to bring peacefulness in their lives. On the other hand, on Cyclades existed the only culture that placed the man in the center of the universe. Indeed, it could be said that in Aegean of the third millennium, man was deified, or the Godhead was humanized, because the man was the measure for all things. It seems that these proto-Greeks started on that long process of humanism, and this is very, very important. Well, let's take a look at Keros now. Keros used to be for many, many years the most enigmatic site of the whole early Bronze Age of Greece. It is a small island right here between Amorgos and Koufonisia. It became well known in 1960 after a series of extensive illegal excavations on a special ancient deposit on a site called Kavos. These lootings resulted in the illegal exporting of a large number of Cycladic antiquities. The hoard, as this group of material is called, is said to have included more than 350 Cycladic artifacts. Mrs. Goulandris, the foundress of Museum of Cycladic Art in Athens, managed and brought back in our country 81 of these objects, and we can see them here in our showcases displayed. Curiously, the hoard comprised only fragments of marble figurines and fragments of marble and clay vessels. When this case came to light, all the archaeologists couldn't understand what really happened and why everything was broken. It was more complicated because none of them matched with another. You can understand now clearly how difficult it is to explain and to have interpretations about artifacts when everything has removed violently from the archaeological context. Well, all the fragments examined in MCA, and we understood then that they were broken during the 3rd millennium BC. On 2006, Professor Colin Renfrew excavated a similar special ancient deposit on the same site on Kavos on Keros Island, this time unlooted, of course, but full with the same material. Here we can see on this cycle the looted special deposit north, and here the unlooted special deposit south, which was excavated by Colin Renfrew. We understood then that these objects were deliberately broken during the 3rd millennium BC. It seems that these islanders had to break a figurine on their own island and then travel to Keros and dedicate and deposit the fragment to the world's earliest marine sanctuary. It was a kind of primary deposition unrelated to funerary activities. We could say that it was a kind of oblation. Probably it sounds incredible, but we assume that there are fragments on some islands whose joined pieces were found on Keros. And here you can see 2 joined pieces after 5,000 years. It is an amazing work. Well, this islet here is Daskaliou, and during the 3rd millennium BC was a cape of Keros. Here is the special deposit that was looted, and here the other one excavated by Renfrew. So that means that the 2 islands were connected in antiquity because the level of the sea was 4 meters lower. On Daskaliou came to light a settlement of non-domestic character. It seems that people were gathering on Keros, and very soon this settlement became a need. But according to the archaeological findings, this settlement became the greatest center of metallurgy during the 3rd millennium in Aegean Sea, and also a center of a whole network between these islands. But above all, Daskaliou was the place where Cycladic island identity was born, and there appeared the aspects of proto-urbanism that we are going to meet later in other civilizations like Minoans or Mycenaeans. Here you can see the main entrance of this settlement. It is a monumental staircase made of white marble. I'm very glad that I can share this picture with you. We are so lucky and so proud to be members of the family of Museum of Cycladic Art, because last summer we did the impossible. We had the unique opportunity, together of course with the friends of our museum that support us continuously all these years, to visit the archaeological site of Keros Daskaliou complex, which is not and probably will never be accessible to the public. Indeed, it was a difficult project because of the morphology of these islands, but it was an amazing experience that took place on a small piece of land in the middle of Aegean Sea with this amazing view. Our last figurine, I think, is the most elegant ever found. We can admire the undulating outlines, the slenderness of the form, and of course, the perfect proportions. It belongs to the canonical type, meaning this is a folded arm figurine, and conventionally it is called Modigliani by the staff of Museum of Cycladic Art on account of its similarities to some sculptures that Modigliani made, but especially to some portraits he painted of Jean Hebiterne. I think that the inspiration here is obvious, and I will say again that this form proved us that the minor includes the major. Thank you so much for your attention. We will also we would also want to thank our sponsors because they made this event possible. A short video of MCA is about to follow, and in the meantime, you'll be able to submit your questions in the chat box. I think that we are too many, so probably only a randomly selected number of them will be answered. Thank you so much again for this amazing experience.
Good evening, Metaxia. Here I have some questions for you. We have selected an amount of questions. First question is, when copper bronze first appeared in the Cyclades islands, did anything else in the material culture change also?
Yes, the bronze appeared around 3500 BC on the Aegean area. And also we have and other metals like silver or lead.
Question number 2. Do the markings found on the faces of the statues indicate that they practice tattooing?
Yes, indeed, because sometimes in the graves we are also have found needles together with these pigments, so probably it was a kind of an early tattoo.
Question number 3. Are the Cycladic frying pans or mirrors related to Etruscan frying pans also found in female graves?
Probably there is a connection, but we cannot compare them because frying pans are very, very old. Cycladic civilization and frying pans date to 2800 BC. Probably the others are from another period.
Question number 4. Are there any similar sculptures in any other ancient society that are so abstract and minimal?
No, as far as I know.
Question number 5. Is it possible for someone to visit Daskalio and Keros?
No, it is impossible, but we were really so lucky that we managed to make this trip. I think that this complex will never be accessible to the public because of this difficult morphology of these two islands.
Could you please clarify the role of Daskalio and the two sites with the fragmented pieces?
As I said, the two special deposits were an early marine sanctuary, the earliest marine sanctuary in the world. Very soon, the settlement created to cover the needs of this marine sanctuary. But this settlement evolved into a center of metallurgy and also the center of the whole network between the islands of Aegean Sea.
Do we know how Cycladic civilization ended? What
Yes.
happened in 2200 BC?
Yes, this civilization ended suddenly around 2000 because these people exactly in 2000 BC invented the sailing ship. So they decided to move to the coastal settlements to be safer because you have to think it was so difficult to live in the center of the sea 5,000 years ago. They had invasions and piracies from the North Africa, so it was safer to live in coastal settlements, and exactly in 2000 this civilization ended.
How many Cycladic artifacts does the museum host?
About 900.
Metaxia, have you ever excavated in Cyclades?
Yes, many times. Two moments I can remember. The one was when I excavate a grave on Halandriani on Syros, and it was amazing because I was so lucky and so young, and I found a frying pan that belonged to a rare type of frying pans because it had a depiction of these kind of boats that you saw before. And a second amazing experience was on a site that we call Strophilas on Andros Island, and there we also have depictions on the rocks of early Aegean boats.
Metaxia, if you had the choice to save one and only figurine, what would it be?
Our Modigliani, of course.
I think that is all. Thank you very much, Metaxia.
Thank you so much for your attention.